The scent of eucalyptus and ego clung to the polished air of the Veranda, the most exclusive rooftop bistro in downtown San Diego. It was my father's 65th birthday, and the whole family had gathered to celebrate his legacy. Minus any mention of me, of course. I adjusted my charcoal gray jacket, clearance rack, department store, and tried not to flinch under my cousin Brielle's gaze. Her diamond necklace sparkled more than her smile ever had. "You could have dressed up a little, Mason," she murmured, eyes flicking over my outfit like a bad Yelp review. "It's Dad's birthday," I said, sipping my soda. That's what matters. It had been 6 years since I had walked away from the family's beloved asset management firm. 6 years of silence, skepticism, and side eyes. In their world, leaving meant failing. Colin arrived fashionably late as always. My younger brother, the favorite, fresh from Aspen, Rolex glinting. "Look who made it," he called out, grinning. "Still fixing elevators, big bro?" "Facilities director," I replied evenly. Not that it mattered. Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. "Shall we order?" The menus looked more like portfolios than dinner guides. I could feel Mom watching me as I skimmed the prices. "Get whatever you want, Mason," she offered gently. "It's on us." Colin chuckled into his wine. "When is it not?" I thought about the confidential deal documents in my locked desk, about the acquisition that would hit the news in 12 hours. The very firm they were all toasting tonight, our family legacy, was about to become a division of my holding company. But I simply smiled and ordered the mushroom risotto. Let them keep thinking I was the letdown. Tomorrow they'd learn the building they were dining in didn't belong to Dad anymore. It belonged to me. "You live in a one-bedroom apartment and work nights. That's not ambition, Mason. That's settling." Speaking of settling, Mom chimed in gently, trying to steer the conversation. "Have you thought about finishing your MBA? You were so close. It's never too late." I bit back a laugh. My real education didn't come from lecture halls or case studies. It came from walking away. From learning how real estate really moved beneath the surface. From shaking hands in quiet cafes and alley docks. From listening instead of talking. From building something real. "I'm learning plenty," I said, keeping my tone even. Colin scoffed, just loud enough to sting. "Learning what? How to snake a drain? How to polish brass railings?" "Real estate's about power, connections, vision," he said smugly. "Not elbow grease." If only he knew. If he had any idea about the back-to-back meetings I'd had that morning, one with the mayor's office, another with our European equity partner, or the tower development breaking ground next week under my firm's name, hidden behind a web of holding companies so tight even our family's prized legal team couldn't trace it. Or the fact that this very rooftop restaurant was one of my newest acquisitions. "Maybe," I said, twirling my risotto. Dad sighed. "Mason, we're worried. You had such promise. You were on track to take over the firm." I shrugged. "Plans change." "It's not too late to turn things around," Mom said, placing a hand on mine. Then the music cut. A television mounted above the bar flickered to the evening news. In a stunning development, Summit Horizon has confirmed acquisition of 12 landmark properties across downtown San Diego. I watched as their faces froze. Then the anchor said it. And sources now confirm, Summit Horizon is helmed by a private trust under one name, Mason Hartley. And in a surprising revelation, the anchor continued, Summit Horizon's CEO has been identified as Mason Hartley, who reportedly built the billion-dollar real estate empire while working as a building maintenance supervisor. Silence crushed our table like gravity. 5 pairs of eyes turned toward me, all at once. I set my fork down and gently dabbed my mouth with a napkin. Then I allowed myself a small smile. "Anyone want dessert?" I asked, voice calm. "I own the restaurant. It's on me." Colin's jaw tightened. His wine glass trembled. The look on his face was worth every night I spent studying zoning laws and lease negotiations instead of sleeping. Every smug insult, every condescending toast, every ignored message. Dad's hand hovered midair. "Mason," he breathed, but for once, he didn't seem to have the words. I stood slowly, adjusting the lapels of my department store jacket. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. I paused. We're closing on another downtown property, one your firm's been chasing for months. I looked directly at Colin. Better luck next time. As I walked toward the door, murmurs rose around the restaurant like a wave, people piecing it together. The headline, the family tension, the now famous name. At the host stand, I handed the maitre d' my card. Put the Hartley table's bill on me, I said, loud enough to carry. And make sure they ordered dessert. I glanced back at their stunned faces. After all, family takes care of family, right? The next morning, I sat in my real office. Top floor of Summit Tower, not the maintenance closet they assumed. City skylines stretching endlessly ahead. My phone buzzed nonstop. 18 missed calls from Dad. 21 from Mom. Colin, Amanda, the works. Final text from Dad just now. Emergency meeting. 9 a.m. Be there. I looked at the clock. 8:57. Let them wait. If you've ever been underestimated by the people closest to you, hit that subscribe button. Because in the next part, Mason doesn't just walk out. Instead, I opened my laptop and launched the video conference app. At exactly 9:00 a.m., I sent them the meeting link. My phone rang immediately. What is this? Colin's voice was sharp, edged with the kind of control he usually reserved for boardrooms and depositions. If you want to meet, we'll do it my way, I said, voice steady. Click the link. One by one, their faces popped onto the screen. Dad sat at the head of the Kingston Investment Partners conference table, looking older than he had the night before. Mom was beside him, her eyes rimmed red. Amanda sat stiffly at the edge, hands clasped too tightly, and Colin paced behind them like a storm cloud. Why aren't you here in person? Dad demanded. I leaned back in my chair, letting the skyline behind me fill their view. Because I have 3 other meetings today. This was more efficient. Efficient, Colin snapped. You've been lying to us for years, pretending to be building maintenance supervisor, I corrected, watching his jaw tighten. And I never lied. You just never asked the right questions. Mason, Mom said gently, voice trembling, why didn't you tell us? Why let us treat you like that? Like a failure, I asked, because that's what you needed me to be. I shared my screen and pulled up a transcript. This was from the dinner 3 years ago, when Colin took my job. Dad flinched. That's not necessary. I read anyway. Thank God Colin stepped up. He understands success, unlike Mason. Amanda shifted uncomfortably. I clicked to another screen. 2 months ago at Sarah's wedding, Colin joked I was on a janitor's gap year. At Christmas, Amanda suggested I apply for low-income housing. We were worried, Mom tried. No, I said, eyes steady. You were comfortable with me being small. It made you feel big. I brought up one last file, 12 properties, hundreds of millions. While you pitied me, I was learning how power is built, from the ground up. I know every inch of my buildings, I said evenly, because I've worked in them. I understand the staff because I was the staff. I built relationships with people you never even saw. Colin scoffed. Is that supposed to impress us? Anyone can get lucky with a couple property flips. 17 properties, I cut in. All prime downtown real estate. Total portfolio value, this morning, $3.2 billion. I let that sink in before continuing. Including the Carson building. The color drained from Colin's face. That's not possible. We've been chasing that deal for months. I know, I said. I watched your team blow it, ignoring the building manager, barking orders like you owned the place. Funny thing about invisible people? They see everything. He called me personally last week. Dad leaned forward, the sharp gleam back in his eyes. The deal maker, the opportunist. Son, he said smoothly, we clearly underestimated you. But now that it's out in the open, we can work together. Merge Summit Horizon with Kingston. Create a legacy. No. The word dropped like stone into water. Amanda's jaw dropped. What do you mean, no? I mean no merger. no partnership, no backdoor play for control. I built this without you. I'll run it without you. We're family, Mom pleaded. I gave a quiet laugh. Yesterday I was your cautionary tale. Today, I'm family. I shared one final document. This is today's schedule for the Carson building. Kingston Investments lease expires in 60 days. I won't be renewing it. You can't do that, Colin exploded. That's been our HQ for 20 years. I said, rising from my chair. I can. And I have. I checked my watch. I have a real meeting in person with the mayor. I hovered over the disconnect button. Oh, and Colin, clean out your office by month's end. Some of us invisible people might need the floors clear. I ended the call and leaned back, exhaling slowly. Mr. Hartley, came Sarah's voice through the intercom. The mayor's office is on line 1. I adjusted my tie, custom tailored now, not off a clearance rack, and smiled. Put him through. And Sarah, send a gift basket to the maintenance crew at the Carson building. They're about to get some very irritable ex-tenants. As I picked up the phone, my eyes landed on the framed photo on my desk. Me, 20-something, in a janitor's jumpsuit, mop in hand, fluorescent light flickering overhead. The man who'd snapped that photo, Tad Crooked, the overnight supervisor, had taught me more about real estate than any Ivy League case study. Sometimes, he said, you gotta look up from the ground floor to figure out how high you can build. And I had built, higher than any of them imagined. The next 2 weeks played out exactly as I expected. Rumors at golf clubs, whispers in boardrooms, accusations that no janitor could legitimately build a real estate empire. I was reviewing a portfolio for a new tech campus deal when Sarah burst in. Your sister's here, no appointment. I glanced at the lobby cam. Amanda, clinging to her handbag like armor, stood surrounded by my first floor cafe's staff, formerly janitorial crew I'd promoted. Send her up. She walked in, eyes scanning my office like it couldn't be real. Nice view, she said, forcing nonchalance. Furniture's a bit minimalist. It matches the desk I started with, I said evenly. She placed a folder on my desk. Technically, as the eldest, I still have a claim. No, I said, holding up a hand. The trusts? I liquidated mine 5 years ago. That $2 million started this. That's not fair, she whispered. No, I said softly. What's not fair is that none of you thought I could. I stood and walked over to the window, hands in my pockets. How's Colin handling the office move? I asked. Amanda flinched. He's struggling. Dad, too. That building? It was their legacy. No, I said calmly. That building was their comfort zone. What they're really upset about isn't losing office space, it's losing control. She hesitated, then sighed. They sent me to offer you a deal. Of course they did. I turned back to face her. Let me guess. If I lease them back their suite at Carson, they'll stop spreading rumors about how a janitor conned the real estate market. Her silence said everything. Here's what's actually going to happen, I said, voice even. You're going to leave here and tell them their threats are just as outdated as their investment strategy. And then you're going to watch as I acquire the Wilson portfolio next week. Her head snapped up. The Wilson portfolio? How did you... Colin's been chasing that for 2 years. I smiled. Because I own the building where your firm holds its confidential board meetings, and unlike you, I talk to the janitors. They hear everything. My phone buzzed. A message from security. Colin Hartley attempting access to restricted maintenance archives. Right on schedule. Excuse me, I said. Looks like our brother's breaking into my archives. Probably hoping to dig up dirt. Amanda looked alarmed. How did you... Cameras. Everywhere. I held the elevator for her. Want to come along? Should be fun. When the doors opened on the lower level, we found Colin restrained by 2 security staff, both former maintenance crew I'd promoted. Looking for something? I asked. You must have a partner hidden somewhere, Colin spat. No one builds this fast. Without what? I said. Without grit? Without respect for the people who actually build? Amanda stepped forward. Mason, you've made your point. What do you want from us? I laughed quietly. Want? Amanda, I don't want anything from you. That's what none of you ever understood, I said quietly. I built this company by choice, not desperation. I worked maintenance because I wanted to learn what real power really looks like, brick by brick. I turned to my guards. Please, escort my brother out. Then, to Colin, try something like this again and I will press charges, family or not. That night, I got an email from Dad. Subject: Dear son, your mother and I have been doing some thinking. The firm's in free fall without the Carson lease. Your recent acquisitions, well, maybe we don't understand this new market like we thought. I'd like to have dinner, no business, no deals, just a father trying to understand his son. I stared at the message and remembered all the dinners where I sat invisible. The times they smiled at Colin's mediocrity while ignoring my ideas. The years they'd mistaken silence for failure. I typed back. Dinner's fine, but not at Parador. Meet me at Rosie's Diner on 9th. That's where the janitorial crews eat after shift. If you want to understand me, start there. Come alone. No Colin, no Amanda. The next evening, I was already in my usual booth, chipped mug of coffee in hand. The bell chimed. Dad stepped in, his tailored suit out of place among floor techs, night guards, and electricians. He slid across from me. Interesting place. This, I said, gesturing around, is where I learned real estate. Not Kingston Partners, right here, from the people who actually run buildings. He picked up the laminated menu, probably his first in decades. I just don't get why you hid it. Would you have listened, I asked, or just tried to control it? He went quiet. We thought we were protecting you. No, you were protecting your version of success. You never asked about mine. Maria came by and smiled. The usual Mason? Thanks, Maria. How's Jessica doing in law school? Top of her class, she beamed. Those prep books you sent really helped. After she left, Dad stared at me. You know their stories. I do. That's why I succeeded where you and Colin didn't. You see buildings as assets, I see communities. He looked around, really looked. Teach me, he said. To see it the way I do? He nodded, with open eyes. Then we start from the ground up, tomorrow. 5 a.m., Carson Building. Wear boots? He frowned. What happens at 5 a.m.? You learn where this all began. Maria returned with pie, my usual ritual. Add his to my tab, Dad offered. No need, Maria smiled. Mason owns the diner, has for 3 years. Gave us benefits and a share. Dad froze, then quietly set down his fork. He finally understood. I hadn't just built wealth, I'd built people. I'm sorry, he said. I know, I replied. That's why we start tomorrow. This isn't about me taking over? No. It's about learning that success isn't what you own, it's what you build and who you build it with. Outside, he looked up at the skyline. You know, he said, I never looked up from my office until now. I smiled. Sometimes, you have to start at the bottom to really appreciate the view. The next morning, I was already at Carson, laughing with the crew. The legacy, I realized, starts there, on the ground floor. If you've ever been counted out, hit that subscribe button. Quiet strength deserves a louder place in the world.